Hi, hello, howdy, and hey, welcome back. I do always get excited when people do come and watch the videos and do help support me by either liking or commenting or subscribing. As most of you know, I do put up disclaimers pretty much on every video. And those disclaimers are, I am not a licensed psychiatrist, psychologist, or a therapist. I am, however, a life coach. And I hope that by doing these videos and writing my book and reaching out and doing some either online or in-person one-on-one life coaching, that I'm able to help people find a better, happier, healthier, and more successful life. And so, yes, when I do ask for the likes, comments, and subscribers, it's not just for me, because these videos really aren't necessarily for me. They are for people that I hope that I can reach and help them get from a place that I was, which was a pretty ugly rock bottom, to finding some sense of purpose and definitely a sense of self-awareness, where life doesn't necessarily have to feel as difficult as it can be. You can't do this alone. You do need your village. And as you're discovering things about yourself, it's super important that you have these people to help you when you start to realize these things and go through that emotional purging. I also wanted to let you guys know that when I wear necklaces like these are things that like my sister does by hand, and then wreaths like that are things that I do. There's lots of other things. I know there's jewelry that we make, and I always like to try to showcase something that falls in the line of some of the things that we do. And we will be having a store opening up soon online. So if anybody is interested in some of those things, all you have to do is give us a shout, and we will definitely lead you in that direction. So we're very excited about that as well. Okay, so for my story this week, I don't know if it's necessarily funny. It's ironic. And I guess I'll start with the fact that I've never really been a fangirl. I've met a lot of famous people in my life. That changed this week. For Christmas, I found out that the play Les Miserables was coming to Nashville. And I haven't seen it in many years. Chase that's my son, he's 26, so I guess in probably about 12 years. And since my daughter's going to be 14 next month, I thought this would be a good time to see if it's coming. And so when I checked in October, it actually was going to be here in January. So anyway, I was really excited to be able to introduce Les Mis to my daughter. And this story kind of goes back a little bit. And when I was in college, my best friend and roommate introduced me to some of these bigger Broadway productions. And she also made me get actively involved in the theater department at our college. It was just this past Thursday that we got all gussied up to go. Normally, when I'm standing around, like standing in a line or something like that, I have no problem thinking that a stranger that I meet is a friend. So somebody that's in line with me, especially if it's going to be a long time that you're standing in line, I have no problem striking up a conversation. And we're waiting for my son to meet up with us because he went to a different line to get himself something to drink. So we're standing there and we're waiting. So we're kind of moving through the crowd and stuff. I saw these young men, I would say definitely older high school, early college. And they had on a representation of the French flag colors, only, done up in a pleated circle. These pins that they were wearing, and I was like, oh, those are so cool. I love them. As I went by, and they said, well, we get to wear them because we were actually in a youth production of this. And I was like, what? Really? Because I don't hear of Les Mis being done as a youth production. So that just struck me as very interesting. So I stopped and I wanted to talk to them, and they told me that there were 4 young men standing there, and I got to meet the Jean Valjean, Javert, Marius, and Enjolras. So it was, look, ladies and gentlemen, I fangirled hard. I knew some of the lines. I was chit-chatting with them. And I was sitting in our seat, in the seats during the whole thing. And I was just thinking, that was so cool to be able to meet these guys. And lo and behold, as we're waiting, as we're getting out, and everybody's coming out of the theater, and let me tell you, it's packed. So many people. We happened to be standing right next to them again. And they recognized me, I recognized them, we're chit-chatting again. I got to meet the director, the one that got them involved in everything. I fangirled hard. And I'm hoping that anybody that knew me from college, especially my best friend and roommate, if she sees this, she's cracking up, knowing that I was fangirling over Les Mis. Now, and I have met some of the biggest country music stars, some really big rock and roll stars. I've met some actors and actresses, and I absolutely fangirled over some young men that played youth characters for Les Miserables. So let's talk a little bit more about the title of this week's video, The Royal Farce. As I started this journey, one of the very first questions I asked myself was, how did I get here? And what is it that I'm doing wrong? Now, I've said that before in some of my very early videos. And I realized that, guys, I was getting love all wrong. And like most people, I want to blame others for making mistakes. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not what happened. But when you start to see a pattern, sometimes you need to look at yourself and figure out, okay, yes, these people are making mistakes. But then the question needs to be, why am I choosing these people who are making the same mistakes? One of the things that I came to was something that I've titled The Royal Farce, and this is definitely going to be broken up into tiny chunks because it would take way too long to do all of it in one. I mean, we're talking 8.5 years of learning about this process. So today in part 1, I want to talk about the knight in shining armor. Now, our process of becoming the people who we are starts as children. And it starts from the moment that we can begin to hear voices. So before we even speak, we begin to process the information that's around us. My generation, Gen X, we are different than a lot of other generations. And the reason why I say that is because we were the first generation who lived with divorced parents, where divorced parents were more normal than married parents. Ours was the first generation who was completely immersed in that. So we were usually born late 60s, early 70s, and by the time the 80s came around, that cycle had completely immersed society. Now, what we were then exposed to were our single moms. And again, I'm going to talk about the knight in shining armor. I'm also going to talk about the victims, the princesses, and in each of these, how all of it goes terribly wrong. But today I just want to talk about the knights. Okay, so you get these young men, and there's always a very special bond with moms and sons, or most of the time, okay? And I want you to understand too that I am going to be speaking in heterosexual terms. This does not negate any other gender identification. I believe that, I'm just doing it for simplicity. So you would have these boys that would see their moms, and in a situation where a marriage becomes unhappy, becomes uncomfortable, and for whatever reason, your parents decide that they are going to get divorced. During that time frame, almost always the mother got the kids most of the time, and you would spend every other weekend with your father. Now, I know that there were definitely situations outside of the norm. I understand that as well. I'm just going to stick with the majority of what society brought to the table at this time. So, teaching your children what love means became very difficult. Now, the generation before ours was a generation who grew up, and parents, whether they were happy or not, typically stayed together. And the children endured unhappy relationships, abusive relationships, and there was no separation within the home. So their idea of what love was pretty skewed as well. Now, moms maybe who didn't have to work before, now they have to work a job, okay? And if they didn't have to work before, it's something new that they are learning to do. So they have to work a job, they have to rely on child support. They are now responsible for making sure that there's food on the table, a roof over your heads, clothes on your back, time to help with homework, and everything else, and sometimes working 2 jobs, not just 1 job, but 2 jobs, because at that time, women still were not getting paid the same rate of pay. They were not given the same respect as men, and they were not able to get promotions the same as men. So if a woman got pregnant, if anything happened with a child, they were seen as inferior and not as reliable. Now you have these boys watching their moms exhausted. They are independent, yes, but they're exhausted. And these boys are brought up with toys, movies. I guess we started seeing some video games coming into the picture, like Donkey Kong. And the hero is always there to save the princess. And we're going to go into the actual media that feeds into these ideas in a separate chunk. But the toys are the superheroes, action figures, the big strong guy that comes and rescues the woman who's in need. Now, these boys, let's say they're 8, 10, 12 years old, something like that. Now, they see that their mom needs to be rescued. But at that age, they do not have the money, the know-how, the ability in any way, shape, or form to rescue their mom, to make her feel better. So you have this boy who's been labeled now man of the house, when he's not even a man and he doesn't know how to be a man. So you throw them into this position. Well, they can't rescue mom. Okay, but then they get out on their own and they start having relationships and they make a lot of stupid mistakes, So let's just fast forward to when they finally start to have a real relationship. Okay, it may be the first time in high school that they have this real relationship. And by the time you get to college, and then maybe after college, when you're really ready to start thinking about settling and getting married, those types of things, you're going to start looking for people. And this has been proven with my generation. It's starting to break now, which I'm very happy to see. But men tend to date people similar to their mother, just like women tend to want to date men similar to their father. And of course, that's another whole chunk that we will discuss. So he finds these women who he wants to be independent in a way, okay, because mom was independent, but mom was exhausted. So he wants someone who also needs them to help carry that burden, to help them feel less exhausted. And they want to come in and they want to rescue this very tired single mother. I hadn't really thought about it much. But when I was sitting in my home and I kept thinking about what am I doing that is similar in all of these relationships, and it started coming to me that I was dating and or marrying a knight in shining armor. Here's the problem. These men are not knights. They're not. As much as they want to be, they are not a knight in shining armor. As good as that intention may be in the beginning, it's wrong. It's going to fall apart. So here's the situation. I started thinking about it and I thought, okay, let's ignore everything that happened in high school and pretty much everything that happened in college. So the first really serious relationship that I had, yep, that one fell into there. Okay, so I'm just sitting here, I'm kind of going through it. Yeah. That one fell into it. And then the relationship after that was my first husband. 100% fell into that one. Next one after that, yes, absolutely. Then the next person that came into my life was my second husband. I totally, completely take responsibility for that one because I was the one in that situation who was the exhausted single mom who wanted a knight in shining armor. And I wanted him to be that, and he absolutely was not. And then the person after him was the one who had cheated on me. And then the last person was my third husband, who 110% was Mr. Knight in Shining Armor. They find you, they're attracted to you for whatever reasons. And I'm not saying that it's that they're not attracted to you, that they don't love you, okay? But in their minds, in their hearts, you have to remember there is still an 8, 10, 12-year-old boy who wanted to rescue their mom because their mom is the first woman that they ever truly loved. And they felt helpless. So when they get older, when they aren't helpless anymore, then somebody that they fall in love with, if there's something that they could do to help them, to rescue them, then they're going to try to do that. But that's not truly who they are, because guess what? It doesn't matter. Even the most chivalrous knight in shining armor burps and farts. Their poop stinks. They are cranky and they cry at movies sometimes, and they have bad habits and leave wet towels on the floor. Guys, they're not perfect, but they try to be. And it doesn't take a really long time for them to start realizing, I'm not this guy. I want to be this guy, but I'm not. And pretty soon they're tired of trying to be perfect, and that facade begins to fall away, and they can't be that man anymore. And you're looking at that man and going, you are not the person that I saw when we first fell in love. You see, inside that man, unless He's gone through a lifetime of really good therapy that helped him work through a lot of the issues that happened, and most of us didn't until we got a little bit older and some of these issues started to pop out. And some people still never did, because at that time, mental illness was still considered to be really taboo and you didn't talk about it. And men especially did not want to go see a therapist because that put a label on you of being crazy or being unstable. And when these things happen as a child, it's not your fault, but it becomes your problem to deal with it. So you may be 25, 30 years old and trying to have a serious relationship with somebody, trying to be the knight in shining armor, trying to do all of the right things, and eventually it starts to just kind of implode and turn into this big disaster because you're not being true to who you are. Because inside, you're a 12-year-old who's lost and confused and has not dealt with all of those broken things inside. So when the knight in shining armor falls apart, you have this woman, on the other hand, who feels betrayed yet again, feels lost and broken yet again, and it brings up all these old memories, and she begins to trust less and less and less. And now you have the basis for a story that is going to be nearly impossible to end happily until you do the things that are necessary to, one, deal with the stuff that you hadn't dealt with yet from your youth, and two, be able to separate yourself from your past, and three, be able to see yourself moving forward instead of always looking back. Because guys, these relationships are not going to survive until you do these things. And it's the Royal Farce. And what the Royal Farce means is we have this society that's inundating us with all of these happy ever after stories. Rescue the victim. And life just isn't that. So my challenge today really is, if you can, and if you haven't done it yet, get out that journal. Take a look at your old relationships, any relationships that you've been in that have not worked. Take a look and see if there's a pattern. At this time, if you haven't done this already with a therapist, see if you can't find that pattern and find a therapist who can help you work through that pattern, because you don't want to continue repeating the same scenario over and over and over. Look for patterns in yourself, look for patterns in the others, and go ahead and start breaking this down with a therapist. Because for those of us who don't really want to die alone, who would like to have that amazing, special somebody to spend the rest of our lives with, you got to do it. This is just step one. Thank you guys so much. I will never, ever, ever be able to thank you enough for supporting me and watching my videos. I really, really, really do hope that you continue to watch my videos, that you support by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and sharing my video with other people. I am hoping that by sharing my experiences and other experiences from other people, that you're able to grow and learn and become your very best self. It takes time, it takes effort, but it is worth it. It is so, so, so worth it. So thank you again, and I will see you next time.
Have you been in center this entire video or off center?
I've been a little offset. Well, no, Chase set it up, and I looked at it when I set it up. So why don't you go around and look at it and make sure?